Life is a big journey, and sometimes it's not an easy one. And we probably just need to be heard to feel better and to keep moving. So that's why Hear Me Out show. Hi, everyone. My name is Oksana, and I'm here to discuss something really important. Um, I want to actually explore with you what minorities are and how people who belong to this group, there are many groups of minorities, but almost everyone belongs to one of them. This is unbelievable, and not everybody knows about it. So, what is in common between all of them is that most of the people who belong to the minority groups, they feel excluded and they feel that no matter if they speak out and share what's going on in their life, no matter what, nobody will understand them. That feels that way because they are different and most of the people are not the same, and they have different understanding of life, different experiences, different expectations. And when the person goes through struggle, the person who is part of this community, um, the, this person most likely will not share, will not ask for help, will not try to explain what's going on. It will be just lots of stress. And this stress may lead to depression, to suicidal thoughts, and so on and on. The problem is just not being aware what minorities are and what those people are going through leads to a lot of problem in the society, and we do not communicate this. It's like a forbidden topics to talk. Only people who belong can talk about this. But the thing is, guys, even you can be part of it without even knowing it, because, for example, even children of divorced families, they belong to the minority groups. They are part of it. Since the thing happens in their childhood, they just it's a huge change in their life, and not everybody understands it, but they just feel exactly the same way how people who are born something that makes them a minority, they just feel that they're all of a sudden different than everybody else, because when they are born, most of children are uh, they assume that everybody has the same values as they have. Most of the children have values of having a structure, certain structure in the family, mother and father, and that's how it should be. And all of a sudden, they don't have part of it, and they go out in the society, they go to school, and they see that everybody has this. They just assume that everybody is like that, and nobody is like me, and I'm the broken one, and nobody will understand me, and I don't understand myself either, but I know that I'm different. And there goes the whole list of issues out of it, like no trust, like lots of fears, very low self-esteem, and possibly different trauma, uh, trauma disorders or something like that. But it just goes deeper as they grow older, and we don't know about this. And if you want to experience, just without the words, just how these young grown ups may feel after this experience as a child, being divorced, being a child of divorced parents, that's just like terrifying. And you cannot do much about it. But if we pay more attention to the kids who go through this traumatizing experience in their life, who may support and help them, who may do something. Unfortunately, it's not always working out well, and there are lots of suicidal cases. But I just thought that I should show the positive experience in life. I should show you guys the people who succeeded and went through all the difficulties of belonging to one of the groups of the minorities. And just maybe some of you will realize that if you're going to struggle, it is possible to get through. It is possible to achieve something in life and live again and understand that you're not the only one. And I hope that I'll make a difference there. So today I've invited three people. They all belong to different groups. I know I repeat myself saying groups all the time, but and I help it. Everybody is different. Everybody had different experience. Some of these people uh, had had experience since they were born. Some had something, some changes in life that made them belong to these minority groups. I mean, you never know when it will be you because it's not always by birth. That's something that most of people don't think about. They think that, oh, they're talking about somebody else, like you need to help those people always. Someday you may wake up and realize that you're part of that group of people that you need help too, and you need to be heard. And just being able of speaking out may change your life, or be not being able to speaking out may break you. We have these people who have never met each other, and they're here today for the show. But let me show you the interviews first. All these people came here hoping to find friends because it's a big struggle to find someone who is similar to you or who would understand you or whom you can just be yourself without pretending who you are. And this is one of the main reasons why this show is out here, because we need to be able to stop being afraid of being who we are and start talking and living and accepting ourselves and just be happy.
Hi, my name is Elise. I am a 50-year-old single mother. I have a 17-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old son. Um, and I work in software sales. So, about 4 years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer and had to go through all of that, multiple surgeries. It was very scary, mostly because I was worried about how my kids would survive without me, where they would live, who would take care of them, where the money would come from, all of that. So it was extremely stressful. But I was lucky in that I was the breadwinner during my marriage, and so I have financial stability, and I have a career and company that I work for that provided a lot of support during treatment and allowed me to take the time off that I needed to heal to come back to work. So that was extremely lucky.
Good afternoon. My name is April. I am a 46-year-old single mother. I have been serving in the military for about 23 years and looking to retire next year. I've traveled to over 36 countries in my life, and then recently last year relocated to Florida. Unfortunately, I had a really severe accident and broke my neck I was temporarily paralyzed, and the challenges of being a single parent, um, you know, became much more complicated. As a disabled person, I was struggling with my hands, trying to learn how to reuse them, but then also being new to the area, I was very isolated. I couldn't drive and leave the area, so I didn't have a local network or friends of support yet. Um, so single parenting with a disability in a new place, it was very challenging. Thank you for your time.
My name is Chris. I live in the Tampa Bay, Florida area with my husband Steve. We are in an interracial marriage. We also are two amazingly wonderful kids who also happen to be of different races. I work in a specialized branch of HR. Part of my responsibilities is to ensure that all people feel valued, heard, and I have equal opportunities within the company. Hopefully, we'll get to share more about what I do and some of my perspectives, but mostly I mention my family basically because I feel it's important for representation to be seen and for people to understand that there are many ways that a family may represent itself, many dynamics, from single parent households to multi generational households to, parents of same sex raising children together. And I think today we have many things that are kind of dividing us in our thinking. And I would like to, have discussions about ways that we can navigate around and challenge ourselves every day to think differently and give people space and grace to be who they are.
Hi,
Hello,
Hi.
everyone.
Hi, I'm Elise.
I'm April.
And I'm Chris. So finally, we're here.
Yes.
I feel like we have so much to talk about.
Yes.
And I've heard a little bit about each of you, but I'm just interested to learn a little bit more.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, I know I have two daughters. You have how many
I
children?
have two boys.
Two boys.
Yep. Two.
Okay, I have one of each.
Oh, look, we're a nice balance.
I know.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I think we all live in the same area as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yep. Very close to each other.
And it's nice, I think, I picked that area because everything you need is right there.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to go too far because with our busy lives, there's just no way to travel 30 to 45 minutes for the basic needs, right? So
Right. Exactly.
Makes it very easy to kind of stay at home.
Mm-hmm.
So,
in your little bubble, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's why I moved there. Number one, because of all the schools in the area. And number two, like you said, my kids could get on their bikes in the morning and go to school, even in elementary. And I didn't have to worry because there's hundreds of kids doing the same thing. So it's really nice.
So Elise, what really motivated you to want to come to Hear Me Out?
Well, Oksana came and interviewed me, and it just sounded like a really interesting. And I saw your videos, your intro videos as well, and I just thought it would be nice to connect to other people that have been through some things, right? Because sometimes I think I don't know, it's hard to make friends as an adult, right? And you're just kind of, like you said, in your bubble, dealing with your kids in your day to day. And when everything is calm, I tend to just hermit crab into my house and don't.
Self-care. Right?
Yeah.
Everybody needs so much all the time, and so when you do have time that's downtime, it's just
quiet,
trying to breathe.
Yeah, no deadlines, no phones ringing.
It's easier to disconnect now, and I think it's awesome that we got together here and to learn more about each other's lived experiences and differences in those areas where we may have some similarities as well.
Yeah.
Chris,
yes.
What brought you to speak with us today and share your story?
Well, very similar to Elise. I think Oksana is a common denominator.
Sure.
But I think it's just, the story of you don't know what you don't know about people. You have a tendency sometimes to draw conclusions and make assumptions about people and their, in our current socio-political environment, we're already, seem like we're coming to a point to where division is very easy. And I'm a person, I love to bring people together. I love to talk about things that really matter. And I know I'm in a same-sex relationship. My husband and I have been together for 26 years. We just celebrated our 11th anniversary in November 11th. Thank you. And as a kid, I never thought, I knew that I was different in some ways. I grew up in a small town in Tennessee, and, I come from a very religious background.
Wow.
And knowing at the time my feelings that I had, coming to know that, it was associated with being gay or whatever, those alternative lifestyles didn't have a lot of data back then, didn't have a lot of reference points, but I knew that I was just dealing with something different. Never thought I would really have a family, really be able to get married and so forth. And now that I am, happily married, with my 2 kids who are just really amazing, I want to make sure that they have the best opportunities, available to them in life. I want to make sure that they don't have to feel like that they're different or othered, and I want to be able to give them the tools and resources and surround them with people who, are accepting and open, and really help them come to that point of self-love where, regardless of what other people may say or think, you know who you are, where, your intentions, and that you're very sound and grounded in who you are.
Yeah.
There are other people in the world. We all have different, experiences. Nobody's the same, nobody's family is the same. And you never know what other people are struggling with until you take the time to reach out and connect with them, and have conversations.
And I do think that by coming on here and sharing your story with everyone, it really helps to humanize, right? This label that people put on things that they don't understand. If you can share your story and show the human being, right, behind something that is new for some folks, that more that the rest of the world around us can understand and accept love and forms, and then the less your children have to worry about feeling different, right? The less it's become this big thing that you have to highlight or talk about or prepare for. There's nothing worse than having to prepare your children for, hey, sometimes life isn't fair and people are mean.
Yeah.
And this is what people might focus on, even though it's nothing to do with you. And so it's great to be here. It's great that someone else might see this and better understand that we're all human beings. We have the same struggles, the same opportunities, right, in our neighborhoods, with our schools, and that it's nothing that has to be different or looked at or talked about in a way that is normal, anything else less than normal than our day-to-day lives. So.
And I know, we live in a society where people look at you and they make assumptions and judgment. And there are some things that are apparent and some things that are not apparent.
Yeah.
So Elise, what is something about you that's not apparent?
I really understand exactly what you're saying from a little bit of a different angle because I'm Jewish and I raised my kids Jewish, and especially in this moment in time with everything that's going on, it's we've had our small issues over the years for my kids, like in terms of, you said, being othered. There's been a few comments over the years, even in Safe, Sweet Little Fish Hawk, where people, when a child makes a comment, you're just like, it's really sad, because how does a 4th grader make an opinion like that? Well, they learned it at home, right? And so then my kids come home and they tell me these things, and it's, then I do have to have that conversation. And it is different, just being in this environment and not knowing, how people really feel inside. And so you don't necessarily feel super safe all the time.
And I'm sure with current events and everything, it's really heightened at this point.
It's really tough. Yeah. Just seeing people going on social media and posting a lot of things where, I don't get into it with people on social media. I just usually keep it to myself, because it's not really constructive to go in there and just start fighting with people. But I do feel like there are a lot of people who just want to get into a fight in a way, and so they post a lot of things without really understanding the
the whole picture,
Okay, that's
right?
important.
And I'm not saying that that's just one side, because I think I see it on both sides, right? Where I'm just like, okay, take it down a few notches. But it's just a really tough conversation. And, unfortunately, the way I feel about it, like in general, not just on that topic, but that like human nature, for whatever reason, people tend to want to feel better than somebody else, and somebody else to feel better. I don't know. I wish that would go away, but I don't see that happening.
I think it's a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
unless you make the choice to break it.
Right. And I think there's a lot of like people don't see it sometimes when you're, I feel like I am, and my children, because I've raised them Jewish, I've made them other, right? It's just, that's how my grandparents were Jewish, so I'm Jewish, and so my kids are Jewish. But at the same time, sometimes I feel like, oh man, just put a target on everybody's back to a certain extent.
Well, definitely with holidays in the schools, right?
Yeah.
You celebrate differently.
Right.
And a lot of kids won't understand that.
They
and
don't.
When children don't understand something.
Yeah. And and a lot of times, I feel like parents don't educate their kids. Like, there's a lot of people in the world, they don't all think exactly like us, and that doesn't make them bad or worse. But that's kind of not really talked about a lot, especially in the dominant culture, I feel like.
And I think that's why conversations like this is important.
Yeah.
We all come from about three come from a different background.
Yeah.
So, April, what's something that is not apparent about you that people wouldn't know just by meeting you out in public for the first time that you would be willing to share?
Well, I look normal. I'm not normal. But I did have a debilitating accident a bit ago. I fell and broke my neck pretty severely. I was paralyzed from the armpits down, and I lost the use of my hands. And so this last year has been focused on just rehabilitation to be able to live life. So I look very normal, but there's some things that my hands are still not quite capable of doing. Or they'll seize up, right?
Okay.
Like while I'm driving or just writing something simply for my daughter, and then she has to take the pencil. So I have some struggles with that I'm working through. But especially as a single parent, being disabled was very scary for me.
Yeah.
Waking up after surgery and not knowing if I was going to be able to take care of my children. They're in elementary school. They're not teenagers that can easily pick up and take after themselves with some, random adult direction from the couch. And so I was very scared I was going to lose my kids. And so I was so grateful that a physical therapist came in just doing their job, and they explained to me how the nervous system worked and that you can rebuild pathways that were broken. So even though I couldn't use my hands at the time, that I had the power, right, to reprogram my brain to bring my hands back.
Amazing.
And whether he knew it or not, he literally changed the course of my life, because I was in a very dark place. The idea of losing my children and then living a life where I was completely dependent on someone was just crushing. And that was all it took, just one little drop of knowledge, right? Sharing what they knew and took for granted that I had no idea about, to change the course of my life. And at that point, I was fighting every moment of the day to try to tell my brain, I need this, bring me more butter packets, right? What else can I try to squeeze? What can I try to do with my hands? Almost to the point of, oftentimes a physical therapist is like, you're overdoing it. You need to give yourself rest. I'm like, no, I can't rest until I know that I can go home and take care of my kids.
Right.
And so I was very grateful I didn't lose them. But being a single parent, being military, new to the area, I'd only been in Florida for a month when I fell and broke my neck. And so no support network. It was me and my two elementary kids at the time. They were 7 and 9. Luckily, they could walk to school. Luckily, I was able to eventually walk to school with them. But that was a very difficult time. And I look normal now and things seem great, but I will always be struggling with, that spinal cord injury.
Sure.
And I can't complain. I'm very lucky to be here
Yeah.
and to have gotten enough back
Be walking.
to be taking care of
Yeah.
the kids and having our family life, because they're a
It's
big part of
incredible.
they're a big part of why I'm here today, right? They're my
Yeah.
sole purpose right now.
Yeah.
So, but I look forward to kind of sharing. I'm not the only single parent in this area,
Yeah.
right? And so we all
Yeah.
struggle with support networks.
Yeah.
And whether it's I am really sick and I need help, I broke my neck and I need help, there's not an easy way for us to reach out and build
Yeah.
as adults, right?
Yeah, because
Build
we're
those connections.
like American to just be independent and handle it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's American to kind of say hi and be neighborly, but
Right.
go back to your
Not
corner.
be a burden on anyone.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So
That's incredible.
I live in a two-parent household, and it's a struggle.
Yeah.
Every single day. So
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
So I have one more question for you, just out of curiosity.
No, absolutely.
So what would the April now, what kind of advice would the April now give the April at the onset of your injury?
Oh man. I think the biggest thing I had to adjust to was that small wins right now are better than big wins, right? I was so focused on walking and proving that I could do these big things in my life that it overshadowed some of the smaller muscles and important stabilization in my neck and strength in my shoulders that I was going to need long term, right?
Yeah.
And so know enough, I think, at the time to appreciate that I needed to take small steps at first
Right.
and then work
And
towards.
celebrate your little wins.
Right.
Mm.
We did do that in a
Okay,
way.
good.
You know, another thing I would say is I never felt like I could be down in front of my children,
Yeah.
right? And I know you guys have all struggled with this, right?
Yeah.
You feel like you don't want your kids to realize maybe how desperate the situation can be because
Yeah.
you don't want them to get negative.
Panic.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You have to keep it together all the time. And with no one else supporting me, I never had the time to like just break down and just have a moment, right? I always had to be positive. And so I tried to take the things that were frustrating me and make them positive. So like I couldn't wash the dishes because I couldn't even squeeze the sponge, right? I couldn't squeeze toothpaste out of a tube. I had to lay it on the counter and actually lean my weight against it to get the toothpaste out.
Yeah.
My hands were that weak. It was really just crazy, but we had to focus on small things. So each week, my daughters would come up with a challenge,
Oh.
right? Whether it's opening a Ziploc bag or a little can of Coke, playing with a deck of cards, right? Manipulating things. Each week would have a small challenge, and the whole week I would work on that thing. And then at the end of the week, usually by the end of the week, I would show some progress.
That's
And
so
so
cute.
we could celebrate, right?
Yeah.
Those little things with them.
Yeah.
So I had to take things that for me were personally demoralizing, right? But make them fun
Yeah.
and exciting and something to celebrate.
Well, thank goodness for
But
those
what a
girls.
skill.
Right. But behind
Yeah.
closed doors, you're just like, are you serious? I can't push a pen top? Like,
Yeah.
I'm used to being independent. I'm used to be able to do everything on my own. I don't
Yeah.
need this.
Yeah.
Having my daughter, like, can you go ask the neighbor to open this this thing of Gatorade for you? Because I cannot open it, right? I can't use the can opener. And having to force my children, because I had a hard time navigating steps and stuff at first, be like, it'll be faster if you go ask our neighbors. And then they've had to learn how to have their own voice.
Right.
So they've gained a lot from it as well. But it's things that I wish they didn't have to have at such a young age, right? These skills.
It seems like you have the right attitude to really navigate this, and hopefully comes out for the better for all of you.
It already has.
Yeah, absolutely.
Luckily, we've fared pretty well, and I'm probably the luckiest person on earth. But I look normal. I'll tell you I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Elise, I'm sorry. I'm just,
No.
You're so curious.
I am. I'm curious.
Yeah.
I want to know. I
Go
want to take
ahead.
advantage of this time
Hit
we
me
got
with it.
together. Somebody, you mentioned about your Jewish heritage,
Yeah.
everything, some of the things that you're dealing with.
Mm.
What is something that, you would like someone to know on the side of this? Like you said, like in social media, you see some of the statements on social media and just how insensitive and out of touch to some people can be. What is something that you would like to say to people who may not have an idea of what you're dealing with?
It's so heavy. It's so deep. It's like, they talk about generational trauma, right? Like most Jewish people in the U.S., are children of immigrants who had to leave Europe or had to leave somewhere else because over so many centuries, what's the story? The common story, kick the Jews, right? So we're all children of immigrants, and that fear, it's like in your bones. I'm sure you can understand that, right?
Absolutely.
So I think it's just, I wish that people would be more aware of like the diversity on this planet of different beliefs and different cultures, and not be so, honestly. That's just what it comes down to. It's like, you don't have to know everything about what these people believe or what these people do, but just to be less like, well, what I believe is right and what they believe is wrong would be so helpful across the board.
Right, and it becomes, sometimes the conversations become so binary, right and wrong. Just because I don't agree with something, and I feel like it's not right for me, doesn't mean I believe it's wrong. It's not right for me.
Right.
Not, I have a different perspective. I have, my life requires something different. It may be a traditional thing that, because I was brought up in a certain religion, or because I was brought up in culture, I see things a different way.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm never going to, I try very hard not to dismiss other people's opinions and beliefs and perspectives, because for me, I feel like it's always an opportunity to learn more about not only you, but learn more about myself too.
Right.
I've always, in my profession, one of the things that we always say is be aware of the things that surprise you about people. If something surprises you about somebody else, ask yourself, why are you surprised?
Yeah, because your expectations
maybe biases you might have, maybe conditioning and so forth.
Absolutely.
So I try to be always conscious to ask myself those questions and challenge myself, because I know that my journey has been very challenging. I know I've been judged. I've been, not only as a gay man, black man, a man that's in a same-sex relationship, a gay black man that's in a same-sex relationship who now have 2 kids, we're trying to raise in a world that can be so,
Yes.
pointing the finger and being so judgmental. So I just feel having this conversation is what is needed more in the world. People willing to sit down and have uncomfortable conversations. I think be getting more comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think that's what a lot of people avoid. I don't want to be uncomfortable. But I don't think we grow without it. When you start getting uncomfortable, I sense that as an opportunity for growth.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think part of what we need as a society is people who understand themselves better. And to understand yourself better, you have to see what else is out there in the world. Americans don't travel, I think, nearly enough. I love to travel. I have a travel problem.
I agree.
But even biases in, a female in the military. I had my own struggles, nothing compared to the generational traumas, right?
It's okay.
But I saw early on that what people saw and who I really was started to become a conflict. Right? Because I would respond in a way or act in a way that they were not expecting based on what they saw. And so when that dissonance happens, they would have uncomfortable, right? There's a conflict there. And so I learned early on that I created this PowerPoint presentation, and the world according to April Ducote, right?
Okay.
Because when you whenever you take over, everybody wants to know what your new boss is like. And so I created a briefing that said, this is who I am.
Right.
I don't know that a lot of adults these days could even write down, this is who I am. This is key to what I think and why I think it and how I respond. And so I created a briefing that said, hey,
even if they did, who would want that? Who would be the audience for it? It's such an interesting thing to do.
Your workmates, right? Like the people that you work with in your office. And so when I would take over a new organization, which for an officer, you're dealing with a new team every 1 to 2 years.
Okay.
If you're switching up. And so the first thing I would do is sit everybody down. I'm like, hey, everybody, here's our world according to me. This is kind of here. So I think logically, this is who I am. And based on who I am, this is what I expect from you. I'm your boss, so I get to tell you what I expect. Based on that, here's what you can expect from me. Right? And I was very honest with them, especially in the military. You assume like the officer's a leader, that, you know, and so they wanted me to be a leader that was not human, I think, at times.
Exactly.
And so I would explain to them that, look, I'm not a great leader. Great leaders have cameras and stuff on their, haven't seen one yet. There's very few great leaders in the world. They're not all going to be in the Air Force. So I'm just here to work hard and take care of you. That's my job. But if you expect me to be your inspiration, someone who's going to be your brave heart, that's not who I am, right? You need to find that inspiration somewhere else. But no, I'll be here in the trenches with you working, right? But if you're looking to me to be superhuman, it's not going to be. So I think knowing who you are and making sure people understand that, but also knowing who you are and being sound in that makes it easier to accept the differences in the world around you, because it doesn't rock, right, the stability of what you know about yourself. But I don't think a lot of people have that. And I think that's where I think as a community we need to start growing.
That's like an ultimate breaker.
Sorry. Who are you?
But, you know, that's a great point in regards to leaders and leaderships. You know, I think there are different qualities of leaders that are required depending on who you are as well. You know, like you said, if you know you said that a leader is someone who knows himself, and you seem like you know yourself pretty well, and you're able to communicate it. You know, and you're able to set expectations on that as well. And I think that's a great aspect in regards to building relationships too. Is, you know, like you said, knowing yourself. You know, my grandmother used to tell me when I was younger, and I never really wrapped my head around it until I got older. She's like, you know, it's not your business what other people think about you.
Right.
And I'm like, what does that mean? It's not my business. Of course it's my business what other people think about me.
Can't control it.
And then I finally, you know, came to that point in my life. I'm like, no, it's not my business what people think about me. It's my business, you know, what I think about myself and what I know about myself.
And she didn't want you to get caught up in all of that, because then you
lose perspective.
Yeah, and you start to potentially change how you behave in order to manipulate what they think, and that's never gonna.
There's a word for that.
That's
It's called code switching.
Yeah.
You ever heard that term?
Yeah.
Code switching. Yeah, it's because you know you're trying to fit into an environment that, you know, I've done it. You know.
Yeah.
Coming
of
up.
course.
Yeah.
We all have.
I assumed that when I was younger, I assumed that role as being a straight male because I felt like I would be more accepted in life, but I was getting more lost and more, you know, and I ended up lying to myself, being dishonest to other people. What I wanted for my life.
No.
So I think where it all starts from me and from my perspective is when people are treating other people unkindly and being insensitive and just being ugly. You know, my son's going through it right now in regards to cyberbullying. And I tell him, I said, you know what? But it's not about me.
Right.
It's about them. They have
Oh my
no
gosh.
opinion of themselves.
That's so important.
They feel bad about themselves. Something is happening in their lives that they can't quite grapple with, and you are target.
That's so important.
Yeah.
I actually
unfortunate.
had to teach my kids that lesson very young, because their father had to go when my son was 3 and my daughter was 6. He just made he'd made a lot of mistakes over the years, but he made one fatal mistake, pretty huge. And so he left, like literally on a Tuesday, he was just gone. So I had my kids in therapy for years, but it was just like, this is not about you. Because that's what you read, like kids of divorce, a lot of times they internalize that. and they think that there's something wrong with them. And I just had to say, you know, people can only give what they have to give, right? If they don't have it inside them to give, if they don't love themselves, then they can't give it to you, and that's not about you, right? So I think in the end, they're 14 and 17 now, and I think that I did a really good job from that perspective anyway. Like they really don't have any of that baggage.
Right.
They're not carrying it around. So.
I had another analogy just recently that, you know, they're all very similar, they fit into the same, but somebody offered this advice is that you're only able to love to the capacity you can give love.
Right.
You know, you're only able to receive love to the capacity you're able to give it.
Right.
And that, you know, you can change that, but again, it's a personal choice.
You got to be willing to do the work internally, and that's tough.
It's very tough. It's challenging.
Mm-hmm.
But without challenges, we don't grow. So go back to that.
As you said, yes.
Being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Getting comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's hard. I hear you. That fear of losing your kids is like, there's no fear like that.
Right.
There's no fear like that. That was just horrible.
Yeah. Well, physically or mentally or emotionally, I mean, your kids are so lucky that you were willing to say, you know what, this is more than I can probably deal with as a parent. We want to be everything to our children.
Yeah.
But you said, no, I need somebody to help that can probably offer you more guidance through this than I can.
Oh, yeah, because I was in trauma.
Right. No,
I was in major trauma.
Absolutely.
So I look back on it, and my biggest regret is just that I feel like from the time my little boy, my baby, was 3 until maybe 5, like I didn't get to experience him as a baby the way I should have because of the trauma that I went through.
Oh, yeah.
And to relate to your fear of losing your kids, it does kind of come full circle sometimes when you think about it. It doesn't matter sometimes what kind of parent you are. You can love your kids, you can provide your kids with all the things that they require in the world, but if the world around you somehow shifts in a direction, you know, for me, that happened to me. When all this legislation was going on around the LGBT rights here in Florida.
Okay.
You know, and they were trying to reverse rights and marriage rights and so forth.
Okay.
And there's still some speculation about
Right.
So that fear often looms over me, you know.
Yes.
Somebody's like, oh, that's not ever going to happen. But
It's happened.
especially in the last 10 years.
Right.
Not to say that something's not going to happen because our world, our nation has
Everything you
changed
can to protect yourself.
so much. And has things that I never thought I would see in my lifetime because of historical data and hoping that we learn from our historical mistakes and so forth
Right.
are repeating themselves.
So sad.
I think the pendulum is swinging. So we made a lot of progress, and I think for me personally, I felt really good about where our country was headed. And then it swings heavily in one direction, right? It makes people uncomfortable, and so
Then we get
that
the
pullback
backlash.
is happening.
Yeah.
And so it's scary to see how the progress we've made start to recede, and you want to fight to keep it so badly because it allowed you to breathe and into a way of life that you didn't think was possible for yourself at any given time, and then for it to be taken away, or the fear of that to be taken away, it is just horrifying, especially when it happens to your family and to children who cannot conceptualize why adults are making these decisions that say that what they are and the family that they have, there's something wrong.
So they feel and who they are just at their core.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as a parent, I tell you, my parent journey has really taught me so much.
Yes.
I have so much respect for, you know, looking back for my mom. My mom, you know, she was widowed when I was 6 weeks old.
Wow.
My father was killed in an accident. She was widowed with 5 kids and so forth.
Oh my gosh.
And so I just look back and I have so much respect for that parental journey. I see my struggles with 2 kids.
Yeah.
And going back to what you said, April, also regarding that pendulum swinging, it is scary sometimes, but if you look at things now where we're at, sometimes that extreme swing is needed to uncover a lot of the undesirable things that have kind of been looming in the shadows there. We have to address them head on,
right?
You know.
Yeah. Well, it's better to know that it's still alive and kicking, you know, instead of just being ignorant and thinking that you're perfectly safe everywhere.
It still lives. It still lives. I mean, now what are we going to do about it? You know, and I think that's another important thing that we, you know, I've learned in my life how I come to identify. I think there's three types of reactions in the world to certain things. There's those who feel like, you know, something's happening to them. You know, there's those who feel like things are happening through them, and then there's those who feel like, you know, it's so overwhelming that they just want to unplug.
They just shut down.
They just out and not even participate in life anymore.
Right. And that happens.
And it happens. And I think that's, you know, happening now to a large extent. You know, not only the division, but just the checking out too.
Right.
And I think, you know, people are just losing hope.
Yeah.
You know, and I think, again, coming back to these conversations, I think these conversations need to happen on a larger scale. Yes, we have the United Nations, but even the United Nations are not.
It's so disconnected
from
from
real life in a sense, and what truly matters to people like us.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just looking forward to keeping this conversation going in whatever aspect that may be, in whatever form that one may be.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I do feel like what's happening now in our society that makes that harder, makes people want to unplug more. There's so much misinformation out there, more so than ever before. What's happening is that it's not just people are being ugly and I just want to unplug. It's, I don't even know what to believe anymore.
Yeah.
And so people are overwhelmed with what's the truth. Mm-hmm. They don't even know where to go to find the truth. Mm-hmm. And so
that's a good point.
I think it's another reason why people are unplugging. And again, you're right. These conversations help people connect in a way that is genuine, right? And therefore, I think because we're not pushing an agenda here, we're just talking about our lives and sharing our experiences. And for that to be its own truth in a way, and help people realize that there's more out there, and that, you know, media is not the place to go. It's these conversations and these connections that will help them guide themselves in what is a really tumultuous time. So I hope that we keep having these. I hope that we can find a way to get this out so that people can see, right, the different lives and distinctions, all within our little bubble of Fishhawk, right? The struggles that families are having, and to see that we maybe probably need to know our neighbors better,
right?
Accept our neighbors more.
And that saying that just be kind because you never know what people are going through.
Right.
I mean, it's really cute as a meme on social media, but do you actually live that? Do you live that with the people that you see on a daily basis?
Right. Yeah.
Are you kind to people and not judgmental? I don't know.
No,
I think that's the key to it all.
I agree.
Right? Actually doing it.
We're a football family, so we watch football. And on Sundays, I notice in NFL, most of the teams, if not all the teams, on the back of their helmet, they have a saying. And I think one of them is "Choose Love," which I think is a great way to get that message out there.
Yeah.
But you know, what are we doing to enforce that? What are we doing to practice that? What are we doing to be demonstrative of those, you know, aspects of life and so forth? And there are people out there doing some great work. I mean, don't get me wrong.
For sure.
People out there doing some great work. But back to what April was saying as well in regards to the media and what we were talking about earlier about social media. I think a lot of us have a tendency to look into the wrong places for truth or for facts. And I think facts is so important.
Right. And just being more careful about what you're reposting or what you're putting out there. Because I feel like sometimes like just the reading comprehension and the research doesn't happen. So then they post it and it gets reposted. But what it actually means isn't even what they thought. And they don't even realize it. That's why I don't get into the arguments, because if they didn't comprehend what they were posting in the first place, then you can't, how are you gonna convince somebody otherwise?
Right. It just becomes a kind of a unconscious action to like, that's cool.
Because it's really easy to post something on social media and then just, go watch a TV show. You're not actually talking to people and trying to understand.
You're not wanting to understand. What you're wanting is
it's
an echo chamber.
It's like the screaming into the void, you know?
Yeah.
It's just
That instant gratification of a like.
Yes.
Of a
Right.
like.
Right.
Right.
What they want is, this is what I believe, this is what I think, this is something powerful, and I want a bunch of people. I want a bunch of people to agree with me.
Right.
Right. So I'm going to share
Make
it.
me feel better.
Right.
Yes.
And then when someone,
Yes.
if someone happens to say something, we'll all jump on them. Right. And so it's I think social media, and that's our electronics, our media in general, the way that it's currently engineered is just not healthy for us. It's engineered specifically, understanding the brain and how it works.
Yeah.
It is engineered to do us harm
Right.
in some ways,
The
right?
rage, attracting the rage.
Well, it's engineered to keep us sucked, and to be
Addicted to that instant.
right, that gratification that you're talking about.
Yeah, and that anger that comes up when you see something,
Yeah.
and you feel like you feel like you want to say something, but then it's like take self-control to just be like, it's pointless.
Yeah.
Don't
have
do
that
it.
self-control till they're 25, right?
I
That's
know.
when that frontal lobe is fully formed. And so how do you
Right?
teach?
Like how we thought we knew everything, right?
Right.
When we were in our
Yeah.
early 20s. If
Well,
we had social media, I don't know.
we didn't
I
have
mean,
to
that's what's
tackle.
happening. I know.
We're a transitional generation where
Right.
we didn't grow up with these things, so we didn't have to
Every
have,
move we made wasn't on camera.
right, and we
Thank
didn't have to
goodness.
have ways to I think grow up healthy in this environment. And so now we're also tackling this new thing that's engineered against how we're wired as
Right.
as human beings.
Right.
So we're trying to grapple with that, and we're sucked in just as easily. But then how do we put good structure and boundaries in place for our children? How do we
And that's
teach
key.
them?
It's
Starts at
very,
home.
it's very
Starts at home.
difficult.
But it's not an experience we've had to do. We didn't grow up, like we
Right.
had boundaries when we were kids, but it wasn't about electronic media.
No, they didn't have we didn't have access to the variety of detrimental information that they do.
Misinformation.
It's
And
everywhere.
And I think that's where there's a responsibility on the people who have those media sites, right, to work through better ways to filter misinformation, filter hate information, so that we have a healthier environment. If you're going to provide us an environment, if you're going to engineer electronics that are specifically designed to use our body's chemistry against us, then there is a moral obligation on the other end to make it a more healthy experience and environment. And I think we're just now getting there.
Right.
Unfortunately, a lot of times we are all about the new, and we can, so we should, and we're not good as Americans of sometimes saying we can, but should we? And
Yeah.
how should we before we put it out there, before we make it available? And so there are cultures that I've seen in my travels that do a better job of that, of protecting their societies and their people and the family structure specifically, because they know that that's the bedrock, right, of their nation. And so I really, I look forward to the continued conversation that we're starting to have now about how to make social media a beneficial part of our society,
Right. Absolutely.
less detrimental to our society.
It's so hard
It's so
because
hard, too.
there are bad actors, and how do you
Right.
And we're a capitalistic society. If
Right.
It makes money.
right?
know,
And free speech, right?
Preach
And so the people that are in charge don't want to be held responsible.
For overstepping those freedoms.
Right, like who's allowed to say, who's allowed to have free speech and who's not, and it becomes a whole thing. I think there's just this morning with Twitter X where he's suing somebody again for something. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just to bring all that full circle to our initial conversation, how we kind of started off everything.
Right.
What brings you here today? We talking. The inspiration to be here is to talk about the things that have impacted our life
Right.
on a personal level.
Resilience.
And now we're here talking about social media because it impacts our life on a personal level,
Right.
as well.
And no matter who you are and where you came from, who I am and where I came from, no matter your background, we are different people sitting here today, and yet we are struggling with some of the same issues in our society.
For sure.
Those are things we can agree on and come together on, and I don't think we have that enough. And
And not just, I think not just agree on, but be a source of, you know, so just being able to talk about it and sharing your fears with other people that understand what you're going through. Maybe it's tweaked a little bit, but it's the same thing at the base. It helps, it just helps you not to feel so alone and not to go into those dark places that can happen to us, because we get dejected and we feel like it's hopeless, right? And then to be surrounded by people that understand what you're going through and just, you know, lift you up even for a minute a day, it does help.
Goes a long way, doesn't it? Goes a long way.
I look forward to hanging out with you guys when we get back to Fish Hawk.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I this has been extremely insightful for me, you know, and we're a small audience of 3.
Right.
You know,
Hopefully it helped somebody that'll watch this later.
hopefully. I can only say for myself right now is that you've given me a lot to think about, both of you. Give me a lot to think about, and how, you know, I would like to apply that in my life moving forward. You know, you give me some insight to apply to offer my children, you know, insight. You give me a little bit different perspective to look at my relationship, you know, with my husband. And again, as we said earlier, I'm looking forward to keeping this conversation going. And I hope, you know, in some shape or form that we can meet back here again, or even if it's outside the confines of this studio, that we keep the conversation going.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That would be great.
It was really nice to meet you, Elise.
You too, April.
You as well, Chris.
You too, Chris.
Well, let's have a little sip break, and then we can
Coffee and tea and water.
cheers.